What is the essence of Alfa Romeo? Beautiful design, racing heritage, great handling, Italian style? Hard to put your finger on it, but if you know, you know. The Alfisti know, and if the boys from Top Gear are to be believed, you can't be a real petrolhead until you've owned an Alfa Romeo. By 2027, Alfa Romeo have stated they will only make battery electric powered cars, and this is their first all-electric Alfa Romeo. This is the Alfa Romeo Junior. The big question is, does it have the essence of Alfa Romeo? Can it keep the Alfisti happy? With Alfa Romeo being part of the Stellantis group, this car uses the eCMP platform, which is common with Jeep Avenger, Fiat 600, Vauxhall Mokka and Corsa, DS3, Citroën C4, Peugeot 2008. But how do you make a car stand out? How do you make it just not similar to all the other cars using the same platform? That is Alfa Romeo's challenge. How do you make it different? Well, you get the designer responsible for one of the most beautiful cars I've seen in the last 10 to 15 years, the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, and you get him to pen this car. This is the same designer as responsible for 33 Stradale, and you can see the essence of Alfa Romeo pouring out of this car. But you only really get to appreciate that when you're with the car. You can look at pictures of this car and you won't see it. And what I want to try and do in this video is to show you some of the detail, some of the essence of Alfa. Now, it wasn't that many years ago that the classifications of cars were quite straightforward. You had hatchbacks and saloons and estate cars and convertibles and sports cars. Nowadays, you've got small SUVs, mid-size SUVs, large SUVs, compact crossovers, hatchbacks, saloon. It's really complicated. And I'm still not quite sure the classification of the car behind me. To me, it just looks like a small, sporty hatchback. Now, the Alfisti will be wanting small, lightweight, sports, performance cars. And that isn't necessarily what you've got behind me, but the only way you get the investment in those smaller, more niche cars is to have volume products. And for me, that's what Tonale delivers, and that's definitely what Junior needs to deliver. This is an Alfa Romeo for the masses. Now, I can't really do this film without mentioning the name, because I'm sure many of you will know this car, up until last week, was called the Alfa Romeo Milano. But thanks to the Italian government, Alfa Romeo have had some of the best publicity they could have wished for. There was a bit of a dispute because the Milano is going to be built in Poland. The Italian government weren't happy with that, decided it wasn't able to be called Milano, so Alfa Romeo simply looked through the archive of beautiful historic cars that they've made in the past and picked Junior as the name. Now, for me, when I look back at the archive of Alfas, the things I love about Alfa Romeo, one of the standout features is headlamps. In particular, the 3 headlamps that you saw on cars like the 159 or the Brera. I just think that is such a beautiful thing. And you can see that in Junior now with these 3 daytime running lights that mimic those 3 headlamps. You've also got this iconic Scudetto in the middle. This is causing a little bit of controversy, I know. I really, really like it. And I'm going to try and count just how many serpents eating a man there are on this car. If you look really closely on some of these front grills, there are a few fake grills. These are just there for pure style. This meshwork at the bottom here, on the left-hand side, they're all fake. On the right-hand side, there are actually cooling vents in there, because even though this is an EV, you still need cooling for things like the motor and the inverter. And then the final thing I love about this car is it doesn't set off my OCD. This is the first Alfa Romeo I can think of in a very, very long time that has the number plate in the center. It's not offset to one side or the other, because this Scudetto doesn't go down far enough for that. And I think that sets this car off against all of its siblings. So hopefully the movement of the number plate from here to here will be as good for your OCD as it is for mine. I mentioned before about shared platform and the danger that we have lots of cars all looking the same. The designers of the Junior have really pulled a masterclass at the back end of the car. You can see there's a lovely spoiler at the top part of the rear window, but then this cam tail, this perfectly aerodynamic shape, looks like the back end of a Daytona coupe. It's a beautiful thing. And then if you look really closely on this bumper here, it just looks like, in photographs, just looks like grey plastic, but there's a nice metallic fleck in there. And then if I open up the bonnet, the boot, 400 litre of boot, which is a good boot space. You've got a false floor in here, so you've got underfloor storage as well. So a pretty practical thing and a very aerodynamic thing. And I love the Alfa Romeo writing on the tailgate. .400 litre boot, you don't really have a frunk, but you do have a cable tidy, which saves you having to carry cables around in the rear of the car, but no frunk or fruit as such. The more time you spend with this car, the more you realise it's all about the little details. So let's talk battery and charging and start off with the best charge cap I've seen on an EV so far. Beautiful little detail, that. The Junior has a 54 kilowatt hour battery and is available in two trim levels, the Junior and the Veloce. The Junior offers 154 horsepower and a WLTP range of 250 miles. The Veloce, 240 horsepower and a WLTP range of 200 miles. But this car isn't about out and out range. For you to hit that 250 miles, you would need to be doing 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which I think if you were driving this like an Alfa Romeo is unlikely. So for me, gut feel says in the real world, around about 200 miles of range, and this car supports 100 kilowatt charging, so you should be able to replenish that battery quite quickly with it being so small. But there's lots of these little serpents eating men on this car. The question is, just how many are there? One on the steering boss and one just here. A really big one here, and a nice monochromatic badge here. One hidden here. One on each wheel. One there. One under the bonnet. And just to make a change, there's not one on the back. I've been quite critical in recent films about Stellantis cars sharing the gear selector, and for me, one of the few disappointments so far in this car is that just this little bit here, gear selector, drive mode switches are straight out of, it's the same as you'd find in Vauxhalls and Peugeots and DS's. And it's a shame that there was no way to make that more individual, because what Alfa have done with the rest of this interior is absolutely top drawer. It starts with these seats, these Sabelt seats. As you open the door, it's got Sabelt written on them. They look amazing. They've got these kind of cut-out gillets in the side. They are so supportive. They're a mix of leather and Alcantara, and they are just very, very special things to sit in indeed. Material choice. There's Alcantara on the doors, on the dash. There's a lovely kind of textured material just here. And then the thing that really sets this off is the driving position. This infotainment screen is just tilted just a few degrees towards the driver, and it encompasses me in a cockpit. I've got this little instrument binnacle. Now inside is just a rectangular TFT screen with all my information on it, but it has that heritage look and that heritage feel. And then finally the steering wheel, flat bottom, little bit of Alcantara top and bottom, just a really lovely place. And if there was a nod to quadrifoglio on the wheels, we see it as well on the air vents. It's a really lovely place in here, very much the essence of Alfa Romeo. If only they'd done something with the gear selector. Rear passenger room. Well, there's not a great deal of it, to be honest. Moving on. Essence of Alfa Romeo, teledial wheels for me, especially on quadrifoglio models, and I absolutely adore these wheels. They aren't teledial, they're actually designed to resemble the quadrifolio, the four-leaf clover. And they are beautiful and open. I love the fact they'd be really nice and easy to clean the inside barrels of the wheels. Shod with Michelin Pilot Sport EV tyres, so performance oriented but also good for improved rolling resistance. And then I really like the fact you've got proper Alfa Romeo branded brake calipers. Really nice 20-inch wheels. This car sits so well. It's a big wheel size for such a small car, but the wheels fill the arches well and the car's stance is just perfect. So in summary, has the Alfa Romeo Junior got the essence of Alfa Romeo, and will it be loved by the Alfisti? Well, I'm pretty sure there will be a whole bunch of people that don't like it because it's an electric car or don't like it because it's a front-wheel drive Alfa Romeo. But for me, I look at the car and I see a huge amount of Alfa Romeo heritage and the true essence of Alfa Romeo. There is a 1.2 litre petrol hybrid version of the Alfa Romeo Junior, although that hasn't been confirmed for the UK. But if this is the first step into an all-electric future for Alfa Romeo, then it's a bold and positive one, and one that makes me excited for the future. I think it's a fascinating and interesting car. It does set itself aside from the competition. It looks like an Alfa Romeo, but the proof in the pudding will be what it drives like. It's got to drive like an Alfa Romeo. Now, I have hope here because it's been set up by the same team that set up the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio GTA. And that is one of the best Alfa Romeos I've ever driven. And hopefully later this year, I'll get behind the wheel and I'll put it through its paces. But for now, I'm going to leave you with some images of the Alfa Romeo Junior, and I'll see you the next time I'm behind the driver's wheel, putting it to the test.